To control spoilers, I have the HUD off and most quest pops will be turned off as well. For the most part, I'm going to be showing you as little as possible visually. Some side videos will accompany this later with some more in-depth thoughts. So make sure to subscribe for those for some exclusive bits coming up. Thanks to Sony for the code. Now for my review of God of War Ragnarok. Talking about starting with a bang. I mean, within the first couple minutes, you start out elbow dropping a bear, then kneeing in the head. Any game that starts with you beating the crap out of Gentle Ben is already weighing on the scales in my favor. Ragnarok starts with Kratos and Loki hanging out long after the events of the first game. Needless to say, stuff goes sideways almost instantly, and Kratos and Loki go out to investigate the upcoming chaos and stop what's already started. And yes, that's like sending a serial killer to stop global warming one person at a time. But Kratos acts instantly. He's the mountain of chaos in human form, riding into this inevitable future on a steed made of weapons and armor he's built from the bones of enemies. If it gets it done, it's more important than how it does. This video is sponsored by That Silence is For You. Thanks to Sony as well for the code. God of War is a pleasure to look at. First, it's helped by this impressive handling of all these territories, the variety that the designers consistently throw at you, altering your perception of the locations, giving you a feeling of Gaussian scale one moment, then next has you crawling through dwarf homes like a pissy Gandalf visiting the hobbits. It's a sense of scale that these games have always had that nails it. However, you're going to notice that Ragnarok's supremely confident in sitting back and letting those locations take a great deal of time to get to you. This isn't to say you don't notice them at first. It's just that it's very patient with the unfolding of exploration. It'll have you see Loki and Kratos rampaging across mountains with lichens pulling down around twisted trees, moisturizing the mud and snow even more, melting it faster, or slowly paddling a boat, yakking with a bodiless head that you carry around because you don't want to get lonely. But it's the character design and the new characters that absolutely impress. One thing here is we see a slightly different Kratos. I won't spoil anything, but there's a scene where you actually see the man underneath a bit and things begin to make sense. A polarizing moment where the God of War is brought down just a little bit. Everything looks tighter in Ragnarok as well, and there's something about the animations that feel more fluid. It could be the higher level of FPS presentation I'm going to talk about in a bit, but every skill, every single blast from the enemy's magical dark portal spells that are all sent to you in surprise, hoping you'll quiet quit, have particle effects that shower around you and fly into the air. It's impressive stuff with a sense of impact that consistently carries the feeling of a massive dude and what it would be like to be hit by a guy who doesn't need to sharpen his axe because he's just going to push it through you slowly. The new attacks, the characters, the magic, the worlds are all mostly explorable as well as you take on the main and side missions across all the realms, each with their different looks, puzzles, and sometimes people. God of War has also made the same strides as The Last of Us and other Sony titles in the accessibility department, which stretch across audio as well as graphics and gameplay. It adjusts every part of combat to make it easier or harder, completely removed from the difficulty choice that the player can also make. From QTEs to the puzzles to pathfinding, every single option can be changed, including high contrast for enemies and all kinds of colorblind options for people who want to change things up a bit. Now, speaking of options, let's discuss the thing that a lot of people want to know about, which is the graphics and their options. 4K resolution with a targeted 30 FPS. They have a dynamic resolution upscaled to 4K and its targets 60 FPS. They have a high frame rate mode resolution, which is targeting 40 FPS, and high frame rate mode, which is dynamic resolution upscaled. After playing hours with all of them, I can say this, 30 just feels way too stiff in the animation department and a bit juddery despite being able to turn your motion blur from 1 to 10, 10 making a Vaseline-looking mess and 1 removing it altogether. It never feels right. Not only that, but the temporal upscaling actually more than good enough to keep the picture image quality stable regardless. One thing you will see here is some pop-in. On the PS5, there were numerous times where rocks and snow elements or farther off locations had small parts pop in and out, even at 30 FPS mode. The PS4 Pro, I found no real drops in the FPS for the hours I spent there. I did play mostly on the PS5, 60 FPS mode, and other than 1 or 2 stutters and that pop-in that I mentioned, it was smooth and offered a consistency that God of War sort of requires when it's throwing 5 enemies at you, all of them using special moves, abilities, and just brute force to take you down while you're summoning spectral creatures to smash them as well. The 3D audio also helps in battle immensely. I'm going to talk about that in a moment. God of War was a looker. Here, larger and broader and with a more diverse cast, God of War Ragnarok is equal to that game and in some places better with options galore, new enemies everywhere. It's just a profoundly spectacular looking game regardless of the platform you're playing it on. and playing it is what matters. Let's talk about that gameplay. God of War Ragnarok plays much like the original game, so let's use that as a mini base. One of the reasons the game is so damned hard to review is that within the first hour or so, you have spoilers all over the screen because Ragnarok does change a number of elements within the game world, and you're going to see those if I put them in the HUD. Kratos wielding his weapons of choice continues here. Skills helping you battle it out, combos that in and finishers, stance changes, moves for some weapons and statuses on statuses building up. Switching weapons to opposite statuses can do more damage, so lighting someone on fire then switching out to the ice weapons hits harder. Every ability is also tangible. I have to say this right from the start. It's incredible how deep the combo system is, and when you add everything else there is a ton going on. Light and heavy attacks and successful moves increase rage, which has a couple different forms. Dodging, diving, and moves attached to them are all here as well. Now, as I test games on all the difficulties to see how the enemies react and what changes occur, I like to note some of these things down. A few notes. First, enemies don't just go up in hit points or hit harder as you climb difficulty, something that a lot of people in God of War originally complained about. They do become much more aggressive here than it felt in the original game. They use powers far more often, depending on the difficulty here. While you do get some sponginess, it definitely feels a bit less than the prior title. Though you have to stay on top of the upgrades the higher you do turn that difficulty, because it's not hard to find a boss that can one or two shot you if you haven't outfitted right, or you just, well, don't get hit once or twice. Speaking of outfits, Kratos' armor continues to impress, with more and more pieces being unlocked as you move forward, with the ability to have you make all kinds of changes, as well as that amulet to add blessings that you repair as you go on. Sets of the same type can give you set bonuses for adjustments to the requisite powers, and those are things like doing more damage if you're 75% below or lower on your health and so forth. You can also have runic attacks. Companions have their own skills and experience points as well as special artifacts they can get. It seamlessly moves, though, between solitary action sometimes to a motley crew, adding risk as you continue to play narratively against the power you gain in your skills and their movements, changing out as everything transforms and adjusts, including who's with you at any one time. With each location that Kratos and kin move through, many new missions unfold. As each continues, new missions unlock, usually as pushers or pullers in quest design, meaning the pullers will pull you farther into the main mission area after the main plot is actually hit and completed, while the pushing kind of missions will push you to a new location for a main story or back to another one. It doesn't come without its issues, though, and I have to stress this. The game is long. It's longer than the original. Depending on difficulty, you're going to see 35 to 55 hours for the main story, if not more, and maybe 60 to 70 hours for 100%, depending on what options you choose and if you want to get that 100%. I'll say this, you get to play other characters for sure, I'll leave it at that, and they are just as fun as Kratos. The game filters this to you through glacial pacing, though, especially in the middle half. You can speed this up a bit, but the game's pacing can be all over the place in the center, especially if you're a fan of Kratos. Sometimes it rewards you with a 20-second cutscene for 2 hours of work. Hard work at that. Other times, it's 30 minutes of just sort of sitting there, sometimes hitting a button or two as characters talk for ages. This draws directly into the strengths and weaknesses of God of War Ragnarok. Its strength is just how much is here. It's truly Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi all as one, and that's not an empty comparison. There are actually a lot of very easy to see connecting points between those stories and this one, but at the same time, imagine a bit of holiday Star Wars special in there as well. This game also does have a lot of comedic tones to push back against the dire feeling of Ragnarok. I think for the most part, it hits. Let me add that the side missions and what you do also did not give me the same sense of accomplishment all the time that God of War did. For example, there's a mission here that has you go kill some raiders to clear out a space, and I'm not quite sure what I expected, but I expected more than basically doing just that, cleaning them out, and it reminded me more of, let's say, a Ubisoft kind of mission than it does a God of War one. It's not that those missions didn't occur in the original game, it's just here it was a little bit of a downer, especially because of how long it had taken to get there in the first place. There was an unevenness there that can really sort of crop up depending on exactly how you take what missions. Some people will play this and not have that issue because of the mission structure and what missions they take, side ones or main ones. Other people may run into even a longer period. And then it also depends on what you as a player and what your focus is and who you like within the game story. I personally liked them all. When Kratos ain't killing, he's going back to his house, the dwarves built, probably giving confession in shifts because he's killed so many people. He isn't, though. He's not apologizing for anything. In fact, he's there upgrading his weapons of war to be even more powerful. As you progress, you get more access to unique items that help you go to other locations, some in new spots, some in places you've already visited, consistently giving you that reason, but not demanding that you go back to do them. The game's bosses. So I'm going to keep a lot of that out of here and just tell you that there's a ton of bosses. Each one offers a unique challenge, something diverse that you can sort of dig into and try to take them down. That being said, one of the coolest battles I had was not a boss battle, but it was a fight on a super fog-shrouded plain where you can barely see any enemies running towards you. And on higher difficulties, that might be one of the larger challenges ever in a God of War game, just due to the restricted sight and how it all worked. It was a phenomenal moment in the game. When it comes to gameplay and God of War Ragnarok, don't expect huge changes. Expect fixes and improvements to the original, as well as a more diverse cast and one that really hits it pretty much in all spectrums. And I gotta talk about the spectrums, and that includes the audio ones.
If you would just wipe your feet very thoroughly, I'll wait. You're not gonna wipe your feet, are you? Okay then, your bedrooms are there, the kitchen is just over there. Anybody need a snack? Kratos? Snack?
I do not need a snack.
But I think we all have a better idea of who we're dealing with. Now, what you did to his boys. Self-defense. Dying is what we Aesir live for. And let's be honest, they were kind of useless.
First, sound. I don't know what it sounds like when a bear shits out the remains of 1,000 hikers, but I assume it's nothing close still to the Kratos howl of a war god in the middle of battle. I love it. When he flings that axe out into the enemy, that layered sound, it's perfect. Cracking the top of an ancient chest and finding a single pouch inside because Kratos has the worst RNG ever really actually sounds like sliding the top of a rock slab off of something else. It's incredible 3D audio. The separation works just so well here, from allies calling out one-liners about how to help you or lead you the right way to the sound of an enemy getting ready to power attack you from the back. It's excellent. Sound samples are very high bit rate. There's no cramping in the spectrum, and everything has its own place. And that also includes the music. Mccreary takes the reins for the music of God of War, the original game, and returns here. From Snowpiercer to the Rings of Power, Black Sails, Battlestar, Bear knows how to match every track with the situations occurring on screen, while at the same time consistently shifting the expectations just a bit to keep your ear busy. Classical instruments that fit the locations and history that Ragnarok loosely sits in, sifts out into big budget movie territories, then seamlessly filters back down to incredible sadness when it calls for it. Bear's always been very open about the original jump into God of War being something he was not expecting, learning about Nordic-styled influences, and his ability to carry in a freshness to the soundtrack continues with Ragnarok. I adore this. I will listen to the soundtrack outside of the game. And another thing I would, even though it'd be really weird, is listen to the voices. This is probably one of the best casts I remember ever in a video game. Gods, and a ton of them. Odin's incredible. One of the most nascent performances and looks in a game that I can ever really remember for Odin, or movies and TV shows alike, taking Richard Schiff from West Wing and that half-eaten guy from Jurassic Park, packing his performance in as Odin. It is nuanced, it is subtle, it is a complete change, one that will have you questioning everything throughout this game. Thor's played by Ryan Hurst, who was Opie in Sons of Anarchy. He nails that as well. I can't dive too far into it due to spoilers, but the approach is not something I expected for any of these characters. This keeps the story fresh, as none of the characters are like their representations elsewhere, meaning every action they take or thing they say makes you compare and recompare and contrast to your new understanding of them, and you really only have the game source material now because they make sure you understand that this game is completely separate from any representation elsewhere. Think of it like a Russian nesting doll, where each doll you remove suddenly changes color. When you remove it all, you find out that the only color was in the very center, and each shell was a bit transparent, letting every single moment color and fade throughout the performances. That is exactly what's going on here until you get to that nice, tasty center. It's incredibly deft-handed at aiming for something unique, but without being alienating. And of course, Kratos returned, that angry bear protecting his cubs. That cub, of course, being Loki, who's beginning to realize that for him, age becomes power, and it's different than while being exciting, it's also dangerous, and those truths aren't hard and fast in God of War, but death is hard and fast in God of War, and you get to see all of this played out through every single character in the game. Phenomenal voice cast. Let's talk about the fun factor here. On a battle, Kratos, keen to stay out of this war, gets dragged back in. We've seen it before. It's another man screaming the entire way, doesn't want to go to war, even though he single-handedly keeps starting it. This is a war pig eating bacon from a trough, no idea just how cannibalistic every single action he's taking is. And that's the best part, even though we have multiple games in this series that all feels like this. Other sections will be up to the players themselves, depending on who they like as a focus to the story. God of War's combat remains true to its base, but explores options. It continues to be rewarding as well when it comes to normal exploration. And the sheer amount of content in this is impressive because it feels like pretty much 2 games in one. I can admit the center dragged on, and some of the side quests were not as good as I had hoped, but the amazing cast, unique perspectives just smashed through any hesitation that I had. So as you guys know, I rate games on a buy, wait for sale, rent, or never touch it again rating system. This is well worth getting right away. I loved it. There is some slowness there, but the expanded cast is incredible from start to finish, and it offers a tantalizing glimpse at the future and unique versions of these gods as they are. We've seen them in other games, movies, comics, and shows, and somehow this keeps it fresh, which absolutely blew my mind. Going out and getting actors like Ryan as well as Richard has elevated this to a place I never expected it would ever go. This is absolutely award-winning quality when it comes to characterization and surprises. There are some really cool changes coming up. So that's it for me. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you dislike it, give it a thumbs down. Check out more videos from me. I'll discuss some things a little bit more in depth than some other ones, so this one can be pretty spoiler-free. We never know what a spoiler is going to be for each person. You can join the Patreon for exclusive videos, exclusive podcasts, various streams we do, behind-the-scenes stuff, all that kind of thing. If you want to help out the channel, it really does. Peace out, and I hope you have an awesome week, and I hope you get this game.